Oh, good boy. Good boy. Hello, I'm Amy Kelly and this is Finn, who is an 11-month-old Border Terrier pup, and we want to warn you about some common garden plants that can be really dangerous for dogs and in the worst cases can even prove fatal. These are plants that you are likely to have at least one of in your garden right now, so please make sure you watch all the way through to the very end. I'm also going to be doing another video on dangerous plants that you might find when you're out for walkies, and also another one on plants that are completely safe for pets in the garden. So please make sure that you like and subscribe and ring the bell, and that way you'll get notified when I post new videos. I'm getting a lot of likes right now from the puppy. So whenever we knew we were getting a puppy, I thought I had done a really good job of making the garden very safe. I had put a fence around the pond. I thought I'd done everything. I'd taken away all of the obvious poisonous plants. But as soon as we got this wee fellow home, he just started eating everything. And I really quickly had to learn what was safe and what wasn't. Now, if you are watching this video because your dog has eaten something that is potentially poisonous or you're worried, please just call your vet right away. Don't just wait and see. A lot of the time, early intervention is the key to a good recovery. So hopefully you are just here to make sure your garden is safe for your pooch, in which case you're in exactly the right place. Now, this is not intended to be a complete exhaustive list of every potentially dangerous plant, but these are the most common plants that can actually be fatal to dogs. So first on the list is Oleander. This is a really pretty flowering shrub, but it is incredibly toxic to dogs, to anything that eats it. The toxins in Oleander cause seizures and tremors and heart failure and eventually death. So if you have got an Oleander plant in your garden, please make sure that there is no risk of your dog or even small children ever putting any of the leaves or flowers in their mouths. Azaleas and rhododendrons, both gorgeous flowering shrubs. Rhododendrons are the really big ones, azaleas tend to be smaller. Both contain a poison called Grey-Ann toxin. Now, this is really serious. Grey-Ann toxin causes vomiting, diarrhea, weakness, heart failure, and if it isn't treated quickly, the end result, unfortunately, is death. It only takes a really small amount of the plant to be ingested in order to cause really serious and potentially life-threatening consequences. So if you've any rhododendrons or azaleas in your garden, please make sure that your dog is safe, especially if, like this fellow, they like to nibble on things. Azaleas and rhododendrons are native to North America, so you will find these growing wild across most of North America, and they've been introduced to gardens in Australia, Asia, Europe, UK, Ireland. You will find these everywhere. They've also escaped into the wild. So, for example, here in Ireland, we have a real problem with these invading native woodlands, and they grow so densely that they outcompete all of the other shrubs. So there's a potential to encounter these while you're out walking as well. So it's really important that you always supervise your dog at all times when you're walking. So Oleander, azalea, rhododendron only needs a really small amount of any part of that plant to be ingested for your dog not to be very well at all. Yes, hello, darling. Foxgloves are perhaps a better known poisonous plant. People are sort of vaguely aware that, yeah, there's something poisonous about them, but you might not realize just how dangerous it is. Foxgloves can cause cardiac arrhythmia, vomiting, diarrhea, weakness, tremors, heart failure, and unfortunately, if it's untreated, eventually death. But that doesn't stop people growing them. They're still really widespread. They grow wild as well. So just be really cautious that your dog does not eat any part of a foxglove plant. And if you think they have, contact your vet immediately. All laurel species are toxic to dog, and that includes the mountain laurel. That's the state flower of Pennsylvania and Connecticut. The Latin name is Cyclamen polifolia, and it grows wild right across the eastern half of the United States up into Canada. It's been brought into gardens as a domesticated plant as well. It does have very pretty flowers, but this is so poisonous that even eating honey that has been made from the nectar of the mountain laurel plant can cause serious health concerns. Symptoms start with a burning feeling in the mouth and progress to nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, low blood pressure, convulsions, and then progressive paralysis followed by coma and death. Seriously, avoid this plant. If you've got small children or pets who are likely to nibble on it, mountain laurel is not for you. Now, a relative of mountain laurel is black laurel. Black laurel can cause vomiting, diarrhea, cardiovascular collapse. Any animals that have eaten it will drool heavily. They become weak, their blood pressure drops, they go into a coma, and eventually, unfortunately, it is fatal. It takes very few laurel leaves to poison a dog, so especially the mountain laurel and the black laurel, just be really careful that your dog doesn't get even a nibble of it. Now, here in the UK, we have a really similar plant called cherry laurel, which is widespread here. It's broken loose from gardens and is growing wild. Again, lovely, pretty plant, but unfortunately incredibly toxic to dogs. So any laurel species whatsoever, just be really cautious and really aware and make sure that you keep your lovely wee puppy safe. Yes, isn't that right? We have to look after you. Yes, we do. I know, mad woman talking to my dog, don't mind me. Some plants give you a clue to the fact that they're not good for dogs in the name. So one of the common names for black laurel is dog hobble. So obviously it has got a reputation for not being good for dogs. Well, here in the UK and Ireland, there is a cottage garden plant called Wolfsbane. And as you might guess from the name, really bad news for dogs. It also goes by the names aconite and monkshood. It's a really popular garden plant, beautiful blue flowers, sold widely in garden centres across the country, and yet it is so harmful that the Royal Horticultural Society here recommends that gardeners do not even touch the plant without wearing gloves. So you can imagine how horrible it would be for your poor wee doggy to eat it. So not one for the dog-friendly garden. Beautiful plant, not good for dogs. Another one to watch out for, and one that you maybe would be given as a gift sort of at the end of December, is called Christmas rose or Lenten rose or Helleborus niger or black hellebore. So this is a beautiful little plant that just happens to be incredibly poisonous, and because it flowers or can be made to flower right around Christmas time, it's often a feature in Christmas planters and Christmas plant gifts. Now, this is a serious poison. Most of the time, anything that eats it is just going to get vomiting and diarrhea. It's all down to how much you eat. But this is a plant that was literally cultivated as a poison for centuries. The ancient Greeks actually used it to poison an entire city of people by putting it in the water supply. So do not risk your dog eating any part of this plant. Hopefully you would just get vomiting and diarrhea, but no one wants that for their little puppy anyway. And it's just never worth the risk. All varieties of hellebore are potentially poisonous. All parts of the plant are poisonous. So just don't let your dog have a nibble on any part of any hellebore, just to be on the safe side. Everlasting sweet pea, also known as perennial sweet pea or Lathyrus latifolius, have beautiful sweet pea-like flowers, but they don't have the scent, and the plants come back year after year after year. Now, these originally were introduced as garden plants, but like so many things, they have escaped, so you may encounter these in the wild, but you will see these growing frequently in people's gardens just because they're a pretty low maintenance plant and they can cope with an awful lot. Sweet peas, normal sweet peas that are the annual varieties, we have to sow the seeds every year and they have that beautiful sweet pea scent. Those two types of sweet peas both can cause weakness, lethargy, tremors, seizures, and if it's not treated, unfortunately, it can result in death as well. So if you have the sort of dog who likes to have a nibble at things, and yes, I'm looking at you, mister, if you have the sort of dog who likes to have a nibble, make sure that they can't get anywhere near your sweet peas. Cyclamen, sometimes pronounced cyclamen, are really beautiful flowers in whites and pale pinks and dark pinks through to reds. There are two varieties, one flowers in the spring and one flowers in the autumn. both of them poisonous to dogs. Now, if your dog just eats the leaves or the flowers, they'll probably just get vomiting and diarrhea. But the problem is these grow from a tuber. So if you think of it sort of like a bulb or a potato that's planted just under the surface of the soil and the flowers and the leaves grow out from it, that little bulby thing is a tuber. It's technically a swollen part of the plant stem that stays there year on year on year. So those have got just the sort of texture that a dog would enjoy chewing and crunching their way through, and they're very shallow underneath the soil surface, and that is where most of the toxins are stored. So if your dog has ingested enough of those, it can absolutely be fatal. Obviously it varies dog by dog, but if your dog has eaten any part of cyclamen, definitely get in touch with your vet, and definitely one to avoid for the garden of an inquisitive puppy. Autumn crocus, which is also called colchicum or naked ladies because the flowers come up before the leaves do. Nothing rude, it's just purely because the flowers come up before the leaves do. Colchicums, autumn crocus, naked ladies, whatever you want to call them, every part of the plant unfortunately is poisonous. And the highest concentration again is in the little corm, the little bulb-like thing that's underneath the surface of the soil. If your dog eats too much colchicum, you can expect bloody vomiting and diarrhea, shock, multiple organ damage, bone marrow suppression. If they eat too much, it's absolutely fatal. So not a good choice for the dog-friendly garden. Nicotiana or tobacco plants, beautiful flowers, lovely scent, great for pollinators, but unfortunately they do contain nicotine. So if your dog eats the leaves from a Nicotiana or a tobacco plant, you can expect hyperexcitability followed by a big crash, depression, vomiting, incoordination, paralysis. If they eat too much, then nicotine poisoning and death is absolutely possible. So beautiful flower, not a great choice for the dog-friendly garden. Hydrangeas are one of my favorite garden plants, and I was so sad when I learned that they are full of cyanogenic glycosides, so basically cyanide. Now, the good news is the concentration is not high. So even though every part of the plant technically has these cyanogenic compounds in them, a dog has to eat an awful lot to actually get cyanide poisoning. Most of the time it's just vomiting and diarrhea, but it's all down to how much they eat. If you have got a dog who just decides one day to sit down and work its way through the shrub, you're going to be in real trouble. So take care if you're having any kind of hydrangea in your garden. Wisteria are climbing vines. They're really fast growing. They get these fantastic racemes of pink or purple flowers. If you imagine sort of like a floral bunch of grapes, that's what they look like. Lovely smell, really pretty, really toxic for dogs. Eating any part of the plant is going to cause vomiting and diarrhea in dogs. The more they eat, the worse the effects. Now there's a similar looking flower that's really popular here in the UK and Ireland. It's the same shape, but the flowers are beautiful sunshine golden yellow, and they grow on a tree called Laburnum, also called the golden chain tree or the golden rain tree, and it is indeed a tree, not just a climber. Every part of Laburnum is toxic, but especially the seeds. The concentration of the poison in the seeds of Laburnum is so high that your dog only has to eat one or two of those seeds to be really ill, and if it eats too much, it is absolutely, absolutely fatal. So if you have Laburnum, or if any of the neighbours have a Laburnum, please be super careful that your dog, nobody's dog, ever gets a chance to eat any of those seeds, because they are really toxic. So here are some of the other garden plants that thankfully aren't as toxic, but still should be really cautious if you're letting your dog near them, especially if they're a bit of a nibbler. Spring bulbs like daffodils, tulips and hyacinths are all potentially toxic to dogs. There is a secondary risk as well. Now these are all bulbs. So yes, the dog will probably get vomiting and diarrhea if it eats the leaves and if it eats the flowers, but if it digs up and eats the bulbs, they'll often swallow large chunks of those bulbs, and that can lead to blockages in the digestive system. So really be super careful with those spring bulbs, and if at all possible, just avoid having them in a garden if you've got the sort of dog who likes to dig and nibble. These are pelargoniums. Now in Australia we call these geraniums. So for the sake of avoiding any confusion, we are talking about the plants that are not winter hardy, that cannot survive below 5 degrees C or 40 degrees Fahrenheit. There are such things as hardy geraniums. We're not talking about those. Those are okay for dogs. These pelargoniums, these tender geraniums, these are all dangerous for dogs. It doesn't matter which variety, whether the scented leaves ones or the trailing ones that you put in hanging baskets or the upright bedding versions like this, all of them are dangerous for dogs. These are begonia. So this is another really popular summer bedding plant across most of the world, to be honest. Now these also grow from a corm. That's that sort of bulb-like potato-y swollen bit of the stem that they develop underground. And again, unfortunately, those lovely attractive corms that dogs just enjoy digging up and chewing so much, that's where most of the poisons are stored. If your dog does eat some begonia, thankfully it is very, very rarely fatal. Most of the time they just get hypersalivation and upset stomach. But again, always call your vet if you've any concerns at all. And the safest thing to do is just not to grow these potentially dangerous plants. A lot of fruit trees aren't really safe for dogs either, so it might be fine for them to eat the fruit, not necessarily the pips or the core, but the flesh of the fruit is usually fine for them. But things like apples, crab apples, cherries, plums, peaches, nectarines, apricots, all of those trees contain toxins. So if the dogs eat the stems or the leaves or the branches or the stones of the fruit, it can cause some problems for them. And citrus trees are not a great idea either. All varieties of iris are potentially harmful to dogs, and that includes the big bearded iris, the flag iris that you see growing near water, the Dutch iris, all of them not great choices for the dog-friendly garden. Other common garden plants that you may have hiding away that are not great news for dogs include hostas, boxwood or buxus, buttercup, all the various types of ivy, Lobelia cardinalis, which is sometimes called cardinal flower or Indian pinks. Chrysanthemums, which are the sort of daisy-like flowers, they're sometimes just sold under the name mums. Clematis, any type of clematis, especially the evergreen ones, the ones that stay leafy over the winter, the leaves in particular are not good to let your dog eat. Any type of dahlia, erigeron, which is sometimes called fleabane, asters, aloe vera, holly, yew, forest flame, which is also sometimes known as pieris or lily of the valley bush, calla lily, gardenia or sometimes called Cape jasmine, anything at all in the carnation family, carnations, pinks, wild carnation, sweet william, eastern star, dianthus, anything in that family, not great for dogs. Chives, onions, alliums, leeks, absolutely anything with an oniony or garlicky smell, bad idea for dogs. Any type of eucalyptus or gum tree, any type of gladioli, lemongrass and lemon verbena, lily of the valley, especially the berries, achillea, which is also called milfoil or yarrow, morning glory, which is sometimes just called ipomia, peonies, periwinkles, which are often known as running myrtle or vinca, primrose or primula vulgaris, privet, shamrock plant, which is sometimes just called oxalis or the good luck plant or clover sorrel, and tomato plants. So while the risk from most of these plants is small, especially if you're bringing home a puppy who eats everything, don't worry, all of the plants in that planter are specifically dog safe because he jumps up here and nibbles at them. If you are bringing home a puppy, or if you've got a dog who likes to nibble at things, it's so much easier just to be safe and make sure that you've only got plants in your garden that are going... Are you enjoying yourself? If you have got a cheeky puppy like this one who tries to eat everything in the garden, it's so much more relaxing just to know that everything that they could get their mouths around is safe for them to eat. I am going to be doing another video about potentially dangerous plants that you're likely to encounter while you're out walking, and also a video on dog-friendly plants for your garden at home. So please make sure you like and subscribe, and Finn and I will see you soon. Give me your paw. Yay, good boy. Oh no, you're going to give me your paw? Good boy.